Hello, 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 friend, and welcome to this episode of the SpeechGoods podcast. Oh, today you are going to get quite the treat with this interview. I had the, of course, 100% honor of interviewing the one and only Jessie Ginsburg. Jessie is a sensory integration trained SLP, and she's the CEO of Pediatric Therapy Playhouse, a top-rated clinic in Los Angeles. And through her revolutionary publications and talks and her internationally acclaimed Inside Out Sensory Certificate program, Jessie inspires a new way of thinking about the speech language pathologist's role in supporting autistic children. I can say I personally have loved her material and just this idea of really starting to understand how important a child's sensory system and their sensory regulation is to making sure that they can be present in the session. It's just been so beneficial. You'll get to hear us talk a little bit about how she started out as an SLPA and how she kind of started getting into floor time. And then she gives us this advice and tells us, the only thing that keeps you from getting what you want is the story you tell yourself, which I believe is a quote from Tony Robbins. She said, you'll have to listen to the episode to make sure that I got that right. And of course, your girl loves to talk about business, income, and all of those things. So of course we get to talk about that. She tells us her thoughts on pricing, her thoughts on charging more and making more money. And she gives us this interesting perspective on her shift from creating a larger income to creating a larger impact. She talks about her core values and she gives her one piece of advice for business owners. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now. Let's get to the interview with Jessie. Hello, Jessie. How are you doing today?
Yay, so excited to be here.
Yes. Well, I've had the privilege of interviewing Chris, your fiance. Let's not even talk about the speech therapy couple goals in that scenario. So I'm so glad to get to have you on. We just heard your amazing bio. You literally are just doing all of the things. And everybody listening, something that I said to Jessie before we hit the record button was this idea of okay, if you want to get to a certain place, if you want to have a private practice or you want to have an online business or whatever it is that you want to do, one way to help you get there is to learn from people who are already doing that thing. And Jessie's kind of already doing that thing. So which is why I really wanted to have you on the show. So I know that there's a million amazing, unique things about you. But Jessie, if you could even just pick one to start us off with, what can you tell us makes you and your SLP journey unique?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. It's so funny you mentioned about Chris and SLP couple because the joke is that our pillow talk is speech. But for me, it's I want to turn that part of my brain off sometimes. And then last night, it's 9:30 p.m. And he's like, can you take a look at these edits I put in my assessment? And I'm like, for the love of God, can a girl watch some Real Housewives around here? And so basically it just never ends. So I guess, but we're very, very lucky still. But anyway, yeah, I think that you just bring up, doing all these things and different things. And I just think about so much. I don't know if have you ever felt like your life is just a bunch of coincidental things that happen one after another? And then all of a sudden you're just where you are.
Yes, all the time. You're how did all this align this way?
I know. I think about that all the time because I basically only ended up in a speech program because I was doing what you're supposed to do with your high school boyfriend, which is you're supposed to follow them. Obviously, you're supposed to pick your college based on where they go. So I ended up at this tiny private school in Southern California, which was near where he was going to college. And he introduced me to someone who was in the communicative disorders major. I ended up going into the field. I mean, it's just one thing after another. Chris and I would have never met if we weren't if we just happened to not be two of the 10 people on the board for the state of California at the same time, which we both ended up doing completely unexpectedly. So anyway, this just life is crazy. But yeah, I think back to when I was in college and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I had this major, but for me, doing the observations at the on-campus clinic, just, I don't know, it didn't really, you don't really know what you're watching if you don't know what to look for. You're like, yeah, like she's playing with a kid, that looks fun, but I don't know if this is what I really want to do. But I did have enough hours to get my SLP assistant license. So I ended up sending my resume out to a million places in Los Angeles, getting one interview. And I showed up to the interview, and the clinic director was walking me around. It was a big, big multidisciplinary clinic. And she said, here's where our OT gym is. Here are the speech rooms. Here are the rooms where we do floor time therapy. You would be doing floor time as well. You know what that is, right? And I just smiled and nodded.
Yeah.
And then I took the job on the spot because I didn't realize that that's like not a normal thing to do. You're supposed to go home and think about it. But I was just so excited because it was my only interview. And obviously it was this chance. I was like, I'm taking this job. And then I had to go home and Google what is floor time. And that is really what got me started in this journey of working with autistic kids. And it was just this one job. And I was trained in floor time by a mentee of Dr. Greenspan. Dr. Greenspan is the creator of floor time. And then when I went back after grad school, I did my clinical fellowship on the East Coast, where I linked up with Jake Greenspan, who's the son of Dr. Greenspan. And Jake and I started presenting together, teaching other SLPs how they can integrate floor time into their sessions. And it was just like, I don't know how it all happened, but just got deeper into all the autism specific trainings and things like that.
Was that still, so that was like during you being an SLPA, and then after you finished your graduate program, like your first few years as an SLP?
Yeah. So I took a clinical fellowship. It was in Virginia, and it's like one of those things where you don't see these things in yourself, but maybe someone else sees it in you. And my supervisor realized that I knew a lot about working with autistic kids and floor time. And she asked me if I could do a training, like a full day training for the clinic. And I thought that was a little crazy because, I was a CF. But I did that. And then it was that year, I think, is when Jake and I submitted for ASHA and then presented like right after that.
So you kind of were doing presentations and kind of being somewhat of a leader even super early on in your career.
I don't know, when you were talking initially, it made me think of the quote. I want to say it's Tony Robbins. Are you a Tony Robbins person? Because I feel like people can go both ways.
He's like the big box company motivate. You know what I'm saying? Like, I appreciate it, but he's like the big box commercialized version. Like, yeah. I'm down. If it adds value, I'm always down.
Yeah. It's so funny because Chris is the one that introduced me to Tony Robbins books. But anyway, that was a whole nother story. Anyway, he says the only thing that keeps you from getting what you want is the story you keep telling yourself.
Ooh, I'm typing that one.
And I was just like, I've always had that mentality where, it's like you can either play the victim, you can say life is hard and I've had all these unfortunate things happen to me, or you can just keep going and get the things that you want to get done. And for me, it's just always, it's never like, if I have an idea in my head of something I want to do, like it will get done. Mm-hmm. It's like I have committed that to myself in my brain, and now it's just about figuring out how. So I think that everyone has that in them. And I think a lot of SLPs are looking for more, but it's just like we constantly tell ourselves that we can't do it.
And it sounds like, are you one of those people who failure's not really an option? Like when you want to do something, it's not like that'd be so nice, but you're kind of the opposite where you're like, no, like this is gonna, I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna freaking do it.
I think I had a coach tell me, because I think I was spreading myself too thin for a while, which I think we all have the tendency to do. And I had someone tell me, when you're deciding if you're going to do something, if it's not a heck yes, it's a hell no. And so I started to think about these projects that I wanted to do. And if it was not like a heck yeah, I want to do that, that sounds awesome, then it was a no thanks, I'll pass, but thank you for the opportunity or whatever it is. For instance, yesterday I was talking to one of my kids' teachers because I'm working on training his team in neurodiversity affirming strategies. And she was like, hey, I know this might sound random, but we're doing a day where parents can come in and we really need to get an SLP to come in and talk about speech development. Is that something you'd want to do? And in my head, it was like, I did not want to do, I just already knew that it wasn't like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Talking to a bunch of parents who think that the masks are the reason that their kids have Artic issues is basically what the school director was saying. And I said to her, oh, you know what? I actually have a couple people in my office who might be able to do that. So I'll check with them and then let you know. But it's like, once you start saying yes to everything, your attention and focus gets so diluted that you just are not able to put 100% into the things that you do. So I think like for me, the things that I do, I just make sure that they're the things I really want to do and will spend the energy on.
I think it takes a level of mindfulness and forethought that I feel like not everyone naturally has. Like I do not naturally have that. I know that's something I have to work towards. Like, have you ever seen that demonstration of like, the guy comes in with the clear vase or whatever, and he has like a few things to put in it. And there's like the big rocks, the little rocks, the sand and the water. Yes, you know what I'm talking about? And like, if you put the big rocks in first, like hopefully this is ringing, Jessie's nodding her head. Yes, that's making me feel better. And hopefully this is ringing some bells with everybody listening. He puts like the big rocks in first because those are like the most important things in your life. Like, your marriage or your kids or your, whatever it is that you love and things and whatnot. And then when you start putting the smaller things, smaller, by the end, you can fit everything in the jar. But if you put all of the other smaller things in first, when you try to put in those big rocks at the end, they actually don't fit because you haven't made room for those things, even though they're super important.
It's funny you say that because I was just thinking about how when we want to build a business, it ends up consuming so much of our time that we end up putting all the important things in life on the back burner. And it's like you are building a business that isn't sustainable, or it's at the expense of spending time with your family. And when I started my private practice, which was immediately when I finished my CF, I moved to Los Angeles, I opened my private practice immediately. And I did therapy. It was like only a few months in, I was doing therapy from 7 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And then I was doing admin work till 11. And I was working on Saturdays till 4. And I would still go out though and party. Like I didn't have kids, so I would use my weekends, but I was working so hard. And I always looked at that like with so much pride, thinking like I hustled and I worked so hard, but now looking back on it, I am so much more proud when I can end my day at 5. It's like I got to prioritize my time. I did the important things and I still got to come home and have dinner with my family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's just one of those things where it's like, there's time in the day. It's just about like, you have to figure out what your big rocks are and your medium-sized rocks are, because we fill our day with the sand. And then we're like, oh my God, I just responded to all these emails that aren't even important. And now I don't have time to work on this huge project or this course I want to launch or this podcast I want to start. And then that ends up being the stuff you do like at 8:00 at night.
Mm-hmm. You are reading my book right now. Like I feel seen because I've literally done this every day, like answering stuff that doesn't matter. And then it's like 7 at night. And you're like, crud, like I needed to write that eval.
Yeah. It's just like when I was building this second business, my online program, which is the Inside Out Sensory certificate for SLPs, like that is its own beast, in addition to having the clinic. And what I said very early on to Selena, who's been like my partner since the beginning, she's been helping me with a lot of stuff. And now she's our COO in that program. But she's got 3 kids too, 3 boys, just like me. And I just said to her, like, I do not want this to be a let's always hold our calls at 6 p.m. Like, this isn't the life that I'm trying to create for us. If we are working so hard to create something, you better be working to actually create a business that's going to look like the life you want to live, because it all starts in the beginning. So if we hosted all of our calls at 6 p.m., people are going to think that that's when we're available, when in reality, we are having our husbands in the next room over and the kids screaming and them all trying to keep them quiet while we're on this call. Like, that's not sustainable for us, once in a while, seasons are busier than others, but I think like on a regular basis, you need to think about like, what kind of business are you creating, and does it align with the life that you want to create?
Yes. I think that's so hard sometimes, especially when you're first starting a business, because when you're first starting, like you're everything. You're the office manager, you're the bookkeeper. I mean, obviously there's some things you can, delegate out in the beginning, but a lot of times it's all on you, and knowing when to grow and when to delegate. I mean, those are all things that take being very, and this is a word I harp on all the time, being like very intentional about your time, about your mental space and everything like that. So can you go back a little bit and tell everyone, I'd really love to just hear your story from like, you open your private practice right after being a CF. I just want everyone to like hear that, by the way, because I get so many DMs about, I'm only 1 or 2 years out. Is it okay for me to start my private practice? I mean, you don't need anyone's permission. Like, come on, girl, go do your thing. Plus, you've done the private practice and you've grown it. And then now taking us through starting this second business. Can you kind of just like take us through that journey a little bit?
Yeah, just that quick thing. No, but that's a good point, because when I finished my CF, I was living in Washington, D.C., and I was moving to LA, and I knew that it was either start a practice or work for one. And I just didn't want to start working at a practice where I wanted to live. I didn't want it to be like, okay, now I'm going to peace out from your practice and start my own. And I just didn't want that to be a thing. I was like, I might as well just start now. So I started calling my professors. I went to Chapman, which is in Orange County, California. I started calling my professors, asking their opinion on starting a private practice. And I had one professor who told me that she thinks that when people start their private practices immediately, it's so disrespectful to the SLPs that like came before them. And so a lot of people were like, no, you're crazy. And then I had one professor who was the one I was the closest to. And when I called her and told her, she was like, her literal words were, you got the fire, you go do it, girl. And I was like, done. It was like, all I had to hear is one person say it was a good idea.
Yeah.
Funny story, the professor who told me not to do it about 2 years ago asked me if I wanted to buy her practice.
What?
I didn't want to expand like that. But anyway, that's just kind of funny.
Wow.
But, I think it's just like, happy people want other people to be happy, supportive people want to support other people. It's like the people saying no to you or telling you your dreams are too big, that's not because they are, it's because that person has some kind of insecurity that they're dealing with themselves,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, those people aren't, it's not you, it's them. It's just like a reflection of what they've got going on inside.
How long did you because like I'm imagining being you at this point and having, before that conversation, that one validation that you like, it's like, oh, I just need one, and you got the one validation to go forward. Like, what was going through your head at that point when you were just kind of, because it sounds like you knew you wanted to start your own private practice, like even through your CF. And I think that makes sense that you were like, well, I don't want to, knowing that you wanted to start your own business, that totally makes sense that you didn't want to go work for someone else's. And then, because that is a weird dynamic if you already know on the front end. But like, what was going through your head at that point? Like, was this like a 3-week thought process of you just like churning this over, or tell us about that?
I mean, I was literally like designing my logo. I was like starting to create my website. I was deciding what my values were, my mission statement. Like I was already in my head, like involved. I just needed to hear someone tell me that I could do it, or that I should do it. And it was just one of those things where my private practice I was at was awesome. And I was like, hey, let's like start a newsletter. How cool would that be? And my boss was like, yeah, totally. Like she was always let me do anything. Like, oh, you want to run the hand in, it takes you to top? Yeah, here, let's set it up. Let's do it. So it was like, I was doing a lot of those things, and I just knew that like going into my own practice, I would just be able to I would be able to continue doing those things.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky that I had someone who let me do those things. A lot of times at practices, you don't get a say in stuff like that necessarily.
Right. And so how did you, because I know you were doing a lot of floor time, and is that kind of what led to the journey of doing like the sensory stuff? And did you start that like within your private practice and then decided to teach other SLPs? Can you tell us a little bit about that transition?
Yeah, there's definitely, like, I would say that's definitely the reason I got so deep into sensory was because of floor time, because floor time is so play-based and really allows you the space to just connect with a kid. Your goal is to connect with a kid, and your goal is to get them to interact with you for longer periods of time and enjoy it. So it's like you get to try all these things. And that's where I started to learn about sensory, was from the other clinicians in the multidisciplinary clinic. And I just started doing a lot of trainings. It was like I was taking tons of courses for OTs. I wasn't getting any credit because they can't give you credit. But I was just reading and doing research and trainings for OTs. And then finally I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to get my sensory integration training. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. So I went in, I was like the only SLP. It was maybe a year and a half or something of classes. I mean, this program is designed for OTs post grad school. So it was like everyone was a master's level, at least, if not PhD level OT. And then here I was writing goals for handwriting and stuff, because that was the assignments we were doing. So it was like I went through so many trainings, and obviously they're incredible, like very, very valuable information, but they weren't meant for me. They weren't meant for an SLP. It wasn't about communication. It was about like activities of daily living and fine motor and gross motor and praxis and all of these other things. That was interesting, but not extremely relevant. So for me, I was like, how can I take everything that I've learned, but just pull the pieces that are relevant for SLPs? And that's what I did. And that's when I started my sensory program.
And how did you go into all of this training? And because I hear it's a story I hear a lot when people create something, they do all the deep dive research for themselves and they realize there's a hole in the market. Like they realize there is a hole in the market that no one is filling, and they end up filling it. When was there like a switch for you that turned on that, like, wait, I not only need to do this to better, I'm doing this to better my own practice, of course, but how to like almost pay it forward and help SLPs better their own? Like, was there a switch that happened? for you starting this second business? Because I'm sure your first business keeps you plenty busy. I'm just assuming.
Just a little. Yeah, I actually have like a very distinct moment. I remember when I was training one of my therapists who was new in the office, and I was training her in pretend play and like what I do with my autistic kids in pretend play. And I gave her this printout of a chart I made of different stages of play and the areas I target. And she was like, "Oh, where's this from?" And I said, "Oh, I made it." And she's like, "I don't understand. Like, what?" And it was that moment where I'm like, why am I making things for just me? Um, it was like one of those things where I was like, this could so easily be used and by so many other people. But the ironic thing is that when I first launched a more program specific to autism, it was like everything. It was like all things autism was in the program. It wasn't just sensory. Sensory was only the first module. But then I realized after doing that sensory was the one thing that people could not get anywhere else.
Yeah.
And the second I niched down from trying to do everything to doing one thing is when the company blew up.
So I didn't realize that you had put out like an online course, but it was more of like a general like SLPs working with the autistic population course.
Mm-hmm.
How long ago was that?
I want to say it was like 2019, maybe. What happened is I wrote an article for ASHA about working on foundational skills in autistic kids. And it was like, I was terrified to put it out there because it was like my like heart and soul on the page. And I just didn't know. And it just seemed so different than what people were doing. So I wrote this article about how in order to build language, we first really need to get our kids regulated, engaged, and motivated. And that article came out and I'd written for ASHA before, and this had never happened. And I just had emails pouring in from people like saying, "Oh my gosh, I love this. I've always felt this way. Like, where are the resources for this? Do you have any trainings you can point me to?" And I was like, I know, like, I wish I did.
Right. Not SLP trainings.
And that's what really was the impetus for the whole online training idea at all, was I realized that there was a huge need.
Interesting. And how long had you done the other more like general autism course before pivoting into this super niche sensory area?
I want to say like maybe it was like a year and a half or something.
Okay.
2 years. I mean, it was a good, like, I felt really good about it. It was doing well. It just wasn't like this sensory just grew way faster. And I think that's the idea of, and you've probably talked about this before, but the idea of like, if you get a brain injury, who do you go to? Do you go to a general ed doctor, or are you going to see a neurologist?
Yeah.
So it's like the more specialized you are, I think the more you're going to grow, because that's your thing and people can rely on you. And I think people have a really, really hard time narrowing down their focus because they end up in the scarcity mindset where they worry that they're never going to grow if they are serving such a small segment of the population.
Mm-hmm. And the irony of that is that it's actually the opposite. Like, even if you look at resources outside of SLP land, which I like to tell people that a lot, like if they're interested in business, I'm like, SLP stuff is great, but like you need to look outside of SLP world. Our world is like this small. And if you look at what people, looking at people who are talking about growing on social media or marketing or anything like that, that's what they're saying. They say the riches are in the niches, which there's just debate if it's niche or niche.
Oh, I've never heard that. That's good.
You never think, yeah, that's the riches are in the niches. And like there's one course that I took on creating online course. they said like, whenever you are creating content or doing anything, like they called it like your client avatar, your ideal client or whatever. And you think like they made you give this person a name, an age, a backstory. And they're like, every time you make content, like whether it is an Instagram post or you're making a whole module for a lesson or like whatever it is, you are making it for this person.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how that's like a marketing technique, but yet, yeah, I like that you talked about like applying it to our little baby SLP bubble. Because even though it's a baby bubble, like that, I mean, that's a niche area.
Yeah. I mean, I think that SLPs are like, have a tendency, I don't know, I feel like they're almost like notoriously bad business people, like because we're not trained in any of that. But also our hearts are so big that we just want to help everyone. And when we spread ourselves too thin, then we can't help anyone. And that's like the biggest lesson I've heard. And I think like SLPs are out there trying to hustle, trying to like come up with an idea for maybe like a program or materials or something because they want to make more money. But the second you are focusing on chasing the dollar is when everything is going to get sidetracked. Like you are going to get tunnel visioned. You are not going to be creative. You're going to be stuck in this place where you are just, the goal cannot be money. Like my goal has never been income. My goal has been, how can I make the greatest impact? And when you shift your thinking to how can I create the biggest impact, that's when you are able to set up a successful business. Because for me, like if my program was $49 or $99, could I get a ton of people in? Yes, I could. But all I'd be doing at that point is building a house of cards, because I cannot have a $49 product and be able to fund the systems, the team, the infrastructure that I need to keep this business sustainable. And my goal is to keep it alive. I don't want to drive it into the ground. But I think a lot of us are like, oh, well, it has to be cheap because then more people have access. And like, yes, I want people to have access. But if I can't fund this business and if I can't charge enough where the business is growing to create more teams, more structure, then it's not going to be stable and it's not going to survive, So the goal has to be like, how can I make the greatest impact, but also keep it sustainable?
I think that's so wise on pricing, because I think that sometimes when people are thinking about what should I charge, I get this question a lot, especially if people are trying to do like private practice. If you take insurance, nah, you're SOL, sorry. But or like pricing products. And yeah, like I 100% agree. If you go into it with this idea of like, how can I make the most money? Which there's nothing wrong with wanting to make money, by the way, like wanting to increase your income, there's nothing wrong with that. But if that is always the mindset that you're coming at it from, that can be an issue, especially when it comes like when you need to increase your prices. Like I got my haircut yesterday. Yes, that's the only reason it looks halfway different. And my hairstylist increased her prices by $20. And you know what? I told her, I was like, you do that, boo. You do that, because you know the problem she was having. So she's actually this is actually really good. I'm gonna have to text Kayla and be like, hey, I talked about you on my podcast today. Her specialty is curly hair. That she doesn't cut, she doesn't really do much else. Like her specialty is cutting and working with curly hair. And she was getting so overbooked, so busy. And I remember talking to her in my last haircut like 6 months ago, like, are you gonna increase your prices? And she finally increased her prices because, first of all, things are more expensive. She wanted to build a more sustainable business. She has like a baby on the way and all those types of things. And she's offering such a niche and valuable service. Like, I am not going to go to anyone else to get my hair. Last time I got my hair cut, but someone didn't know how to work with curly hair. I had a mullet, Jessie. I had a mullet. It wasn't cute. It was not
Yeah.
cute, but yes, like looking at things and pricing and all, and not in an emotional way. I feel like you're good at that. Just the vibes I'm getting from
My
this.
bookkeeper just sent out a mass email last week saying, hey, everyone, starting this date, we're increasing our prices by this percent. And I wrote back, congrats. Like how cool for you that you see your value and you need to increase your prices. But yeah, and I wanted to touch on, you said like there's nothing wrong with making money. And I think that the question you have to ask yourself is why? What do I want this money for? Because just making money is never going to make someone happy. And I'll tell you, having been divorced and gone through a lot of therapy, this is where I learned this was I had a therapist tell me like she asked, what are your core values? And I was like, I don't understand. Like, what do you mean? Like, can you give me an example? And she's like, okay, your homework is to go home, read about core values and like decide what your values are. And in that intense research, I learned that there are values that are means values and end values. So what you really want to think about is what your end values are. So like for someone to say making money would be a means value because it's a means to an end. Like what is the goal of making money? Is it security? Is it comfort? Is it because you want freedom? Is it because you want flexibility? Is it because you want to be able to be adventurous and travel? Is it because you want power and status? Like why? So I think that it's so much less about the idea of just like making money and more about like, but is that money going to lead you to live the life you want to live? Like if your value is security and comfort, are you going to take your money and put it in a retirement fund versus for me, my big thing is like flexibility and freedom. I like to be able to dictate my own schedule. So for me, bringing in money allows me to be able to set up my schedule as I want.
Yes. There's always, and I hear this in the finance world a lot, is like, you need to remember your why. And one thing that I feel it happens to me a lot, and I have to constantly check myself, is like getting caught up in like that daily grind, like and just getting caught up in the daily and not having that vision forward. So how do you not get so caught up in the daily? Because I mean, you clearly, I mean, is this wrong to ask? How old are you, Jessie? Is this wrong to ask?
I'm 34.
You're 34. Okay. You're 34 and you've got like 2 like kick butt businesses. You have 3 kids. How old are your kiddos, if you don't mind me asking?
5, 3, and 1.
So you've got little kids. You've got pretty little kids. So in order to continue to have a business and raising little kids, which that's a season in life that is, it's time consuming. There's a lot of emotion involved. There's lots of like dirty diapers and things involved. But like, how have you been able to continue having this like more broad vision and not getting caught up in just like the daily grind of like, we make the breakfast, we wash the clothes, we go to the work, we do on the computer, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I guess like one answer is more like in philosophy versus one is like more tactical, which I could talk about both. But I guess like in theory, it's more about knowing what I really like, knowing what means something to me in my day and what I really need to be involved in and who can help me get done with all of the other things. Like who can help with all of that? Like if I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, then I wouldn't be able to do all of these things that I'm doing now, So it's like, to me, I want to be at the dinner table. I want to be present off my phone for the whole evening. I want to be taking my kids to their games on the weekends. It's like, I know, and that goes back to knowing your values, So for me, I know where my values are. So I know how to line up my time so that I can feel more fulfilled in that. But I think just like from a tactical standpoint, I guess, is that like you're only gonna do what you schedule time for, So for me, scheduling chunks of time where it's literally like I'm going to work on my business right now. I'm not going to work in it. I'm going to spend the next hour planning for Q1, coming up with our top 3 goals for Q1, figuring out what 3 things need to get done for each goal and who's going to do it and when we're going to do it by. And if I don't get that stuff done, I'm not going to go anywhere, because then you go back to filling your vase with sand.
Yes, 100%. So, Jessie, tell us, how have you invested in yourself as not only an SLP, but as a businesswoman? Because there's a huge learning curve when it comes to, when you're, all the things you're doing outside of the therapy room. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have never regretted spending $1 on whether it's like business coaching or personal therapy or certificates and trainings. I feel like investing in yourself is the biggest gift you can give yourself, and the biggest way that you show that you value yourself, I have never wasted money on business coaching. Like, that has only ever, like, it's my favorite way to spend my money is on coaching, like top way. If I have extra money, it's going into like going higher level in whatever business coaching program I'm doing, because I know it's worth it. And same thing with my SLP trainings, like that sensory integration training I did was thousands of dollars. Like, it was like going back to college, but it's made me a specialized therapist. So I think for therapists who are out there and really want to go into that specialty area and want to become known for something, or whether they want to speak about something or write articles or train therapists or train parents or professionals, whatever that may be, like, you're never going to regret going out there and spending that money on the trainings that it's going to take you to get there.
Yes, 100%. And I think the real important word there is investing in yourself. And I think that's really hard for people to make that jump from like, I'm spending money, to make that jump from I'm spending money on this to I am investing money in this. Did you ever have to go through like a what is wrong with me, Jessie? Okay, a mindset shift with that, or has that always been pretty easy for you to do, like to kind of spend money on gaining knowledge and investing in yourself?
Huge mindset shift, which came like straight out of having been divorced, because it was like I was in a relationship over 10 years. All of our finances were very merged. Everything was split. I wasn't in charge of the money. I wasn't in charge of how we spent the money. Like, I had zero control over how our money was being spent. So to me, to then go out, get a new place, like, I had no idea how much it cost to live my life, because it'd been so long. I'd never, ever lived alone. I'd always had like a roommate, and then eventually moved in with my husband. So, and now I had kids. So it was like, now I was out there on my own with 2 kids, and I'm like, I don't know what we're going to have money for. Are we going to be able to do swimming? Are we going to be able to do soccer? Like, where is the money going? So it's literally like that part of your brain, when you're in that mindset of scarcity, is just like, it shuts you down, It's like you can't make decisions out in that area of your brain. It's like fight or flight. So for me, it like took a while to be able to feel like I can do this on my own. And I think like being able to then like launch my sensory program and see, like, I swear I was like praying to get 20 people to sign up for the first round. I was like, if I get 20, it will be worth the amount of time that has gone into this. And we had like probably 40 people sign up within the first 1 minute of opening the doors. And then we had 200 people sign up total, like in our first cohort of people. And I guess like when you feel that kind of feeling of abundance, it helps a lot. So I think that was like my brain telling myself, like, you could do this and you're doing something that people need. And yeah.
And
So
it
I think
sounds
like,
like,
yeah, the scarcity mindset just really, I think, is a killer of businesses. But I feel like sometimes it just takes going through that stuff to realize that.
well, and it sounds like, I mean, going through a divorce and all that, that was a big hit. That was just like a big hit to like your confidence and like, just like kind of like you said, like, I don't even know how much my life cost. Like, I had just never done that before. So, I mean, first of all, I think you just clearly come out on the other side being
I mean,
like,
it was like a double-edged sword almost, or I don't know if that's the right word, but this like very strange like dichotomy where it was like scary to not know how financially stable I was, but also like the most proud I'd ever been, because I knew that like a lot of people would never have been able, or like a lot of people don't leave when they should. So, yeah. And now to get out there and like be able to not need anyone and rely on anyone else is like an awesome feeling. Still a lot of pressure, but
yeah. Well, and there was something, and this isn't like from inspiring Tony Robbins. This was definitely from a TikTok that I saw like 2 days ago. But it was something like, instead of it making me bitter, it made me better. It was something like that.
yeah, that's good. It's true though. But it's like you talk about investing in yourself, and it reminds me of just last week we were on a live info session for the sensory program, and someone was sending a private message to one of our team members saying like, I'm just nervous because I've only been out of school for a few years and there's so many programs I want to do, and I just don't know how. Like, I know I want to invest my time, energy, money. It's not even about money. Sometimes it's like, how much time is this going to take and energy? But I just don't know like how to justify like putting so much time or money into something. And what Selena, our COO, said, which I thought was like so genius, was that like, look at you, you're so early in your career, you learn this now. What's your ROI going to be? What's your return on investment going to be? It's going to be every single therapy session you have for the remainder of your career is going to be different, and your confidence for the rest of your career is going to be different, completely different. And I was like, that's such a good point. And honestly, like we just had a post yesterday that was put up by someone who's been an SLP for 40 years, who's in the sensory program right now. And she like wrote the most beautiful post about like how this has changed her therapy so much. And it's just like so cool, because we're in such a field where people just want to keep learning, no matter where they are in their career. But it's like a return on investment. It's like, if you could invest in yourself and then change one kid's life, just one, is it worth it? And I think the answer to everyone would be, yeah.
And that's a good point. Like, sometimes the return on investment, like, it might be a monetary return, it might be a return like that. And even I think people underestimate the level of like how much confidence plays a big role in your therapy. And I know for me, when I niched down and just took, like, I got the little ASHA, you probably got one too, the little ASHA CEU award or whatever for taking, like, I accumulated all those hours within a year and a half. Cause like, I was just like diving into niching down and things like that. And the confidence that gave me with those clients is amazing, is absolutely amazing. Whenever you do niche down and you take a training that's specialized, like yours, Jessie, with the sensory stuff, like, it completely changes your therapy. Honestly, it made my job less stressful.
Yes.
Like, cause you know what you're doing. Like, I can't stand running around like a chicken with my head cut off. Like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, we all been there. There was a few years ago, I had Jake Greenspan from the Floor Time Center come out to train my team. And I went to lunch with him and I was telling him about this family and this kid. It was so hard. I was like, I have no idea. Like, it's so stressful. And that is where I learned of the 80-20 rule, which like goes across many businesses. But for this, he said to me, 20% of your clients are going to take up 80% of your energy. And he said, what if you didn't have to worry about that 20%? All of a sudden, you would have 80% of your brain open to do all the other things that you want to do. And I was like, oh my God, that is such a good point. Because we all have kids where we lay down at night and those are the kids we think about. We're like, what am I going to do with that kid? Like, why is that kid not making progress? And that is what this sensory program is for. It's for those kids where you walk in and they're so dysregulated that you walk out of the session like sweating. Now you don't have to go to the gym because you've been running around chasing them, but you also feel like you got nothing done. And you're like, God, what am I even doing in here? And it's like, if you can invest in yourself and get that kind of confidence where you don't have to have those moments anymore, look at how much brain space you're going to earn back.
Yes, yes. And like there's no way, like it's hard to explain if you haven't experienced it. So you're everybody out there, you're just gonna have to take our word for it. You just have to take our word for it. So Jessie, can you tell us, this may be like a weird question, but like take us through like a day with you. Like what is a typical day, or like I don't know if it would be easier for you to do like a typical couple days, but like what's a day for you look like doing all of these things?
I got excited when you said weird question because I was like, yes, that's refreshing.
Maybe it wasn't weird enough. Sorry, girl.
Yeah, it really depends because now I have 3 kids. Chris and I have a baby, and then my 2 boys are basically like 50-50. So on the days that they're with us, Chris leaves the house about 4:45, which if anyone follows him on social media, speech dude, you will know that about him. But he goes to like either do swimming, go jump in the ocean, and then go to the gym. But he works in a school, so his day starts way earlier. So basically I get up at 5 and try to like do something for myself, like whether that's listen to a podcast while I make lunches or something like that. And then I'm just like with the kids, and it takes me, because I live in Los Angeles, I leave the house like 7:20 to drop them at school, and I don't finish that until 9. So that's a lot of time. But that's like one of those things I've thought about, is that like this is my time with them.
Got you.
You know, so it's like I could be trying to do other things, or I could be present with them. Like this morning, we were singing the Muppets soundtrack for like an hour and a half. So, that's a good time. And then, gosh, no 2 days are the same. But what I'm really lucky to have is so much support in both businesses. I have the clinic and I have other, administrators and directors here who help so much. And then online, we have this incredible leadership team for the Inside Out program. So I think I do like a lot of delegating. And that would be my advice for people. And like you talked about, if you're the person doing everything, like the second you can afford to bring in an assistant, bring in an assistant. Like there is no better feeling than to like have someone do the things that you don't have to be doing. Like for me, I know that my time is most valuable when I'm creating content. Like my business will not run without that. So I can't take that time off my schedule, even though it feels like it's just like a window of open time. So I basically just do a ton of meetings. That's what it feels like. I meet with our clinic director, office administrator. I talk to Selena nonstop throughout the day. And then I see some kids. I do team trainings for my kids' therapists and schools. I mean, I really feel like no 2 days are the same. And then I try to be done like about 5 every day. Have dinner with the kids, jump on the trampoline.
That's your exercise. You don't even have to go to the gym, Jessie.
Exactly. And yeah, I think that's the big thing though, is that like you gotta get help. You gotta have someone, like you have to know what your time is most valuable, where your valuable time is, and then get someone else to do the rest.
And I'm curious about, like, to dive before I let you go, because your time is valuable. But I have one last question. Well, there's 2 more questions technically. When did you, because I feel like people would find value in this, like, and you can pick either your online business or your private practice. When was the moment that you knew you needed to finally hire on another team member or finally start to outsource? Like, when did you know that? And you can pick whichever business you want to talk to about.
That's so hard. In my clinic, I hired immediately. Like as soon as my schedule was full, I hired someone. I gave that person my kids, and I always did that. So that was like a very easy hire. I think when you're a clinic, like if you're talking about private practice owners, it's a lot harder and scarier to talk about hiring admin because they're non-revenue generating roles. But what I've learned the hard way, as most private practice owners have, is that your front of the house is only as organized and clean as the back of the house. And if your billing and your claims and your admin is a mess, everything else is gonna fall apart. So I think that's like outsourcing your billing and admin, I think is like one of the easiest things to do in a clinic. And my online business was like very immediate. I mean, Selena was the first person I hired, which she was initially just our community manager, where that meant she just basically like controlled the Facebook group and managed that for me because that was taking a lot of time. And then right after that is when we hired a VA who was able to do like all the other tactical stuff. Yeah, it's hard. Hiring's scary.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's always like, and then you want to find the right person. That's for another episode though. Yeah. But no, thank you for sharing that. I always know that people, we talk about a lot of these things in more general ways, but it's always kind of fun to know, like, okay, when did you know, like in your specific business? So like you're the person who's your COO now actually just kind of started out doing smaller things. And then as you grew, you probably just like added hours to her schedule. And now is she full-time?
My first full-time person in that business.
That is so cool. I love it. Okay.
Just like I knew I needed it or I was going to drown. Like I can't run 2 businesses. It's impossible.
And thank you for saying that. Cause I think people may hear like, I mean, you're doing all this great stuff, but you're not doing it alone.
Yeah.
100%. Right. And I think that when people are just starting out, they think that they have to do it alone. I was like that. Like I used to edit and do all my own podcast editing. Don't do that anymore. Do not do that anymore. But I think that's like a lie or a myth that's been like floating around, this idea that like all these great business people or whatever do it on their own. It's like, no, most of the time, like,
it's not even like that they feel like they have to do it on their own. It's almost like you should not. Like the sooner you bring in help, the sooner you can work on what your value point is, whatever that is, and get rid of, like, you're going to be using your time so much more effectively and efficiently if you're just like in your zone of genius.
Yes. And then it goes back to your why. And I think like that's important. We're coming full circle before we end this. It goes back to your why. Like, why are you even opening this business? I know, this is a female dominated field. Not everyone, but a lot of us are like have kids, like, and family. Like, I know that's a really big thing for so many people in this field. Cause I mean, it's mostly women. Women tend to have babies. It's a thing. And so if that's your why behind this business, like you said, like the freedom and flexibility for your time so that you can take that ridiculously long drive to your kids' school in the morning and spend time with them. If that's your why, then you shouldn't be giving up that why to run your business. Your business is there for your why. Your why is not there for your business.
Yeah. I think that like the one piece of advice I would give is that like as soon as you can, the sooner you embrace the problem solving nature of running a business, the sooner you will be happy with it. Because it's not like sunshine and rainbows. It's literally like what owning a business is figuring out the problems and then figuring out how to solve them. And then when you solve those problems, figuring out what your next biggest problems are and then working on solving those. It is like a constant problem solving. And that is fun if you embrace it, because that's just like you have to enjoy that part of it or else it's not going to be fun running a business.
You have to kind of let go of that perfectionist thing because like there's always going to be something you can improve and there's always going to be something that needs to change. Or maybe what worked last year isn't going to work this year. Like, hello, global pandemic.
That's where Chris and I really differ in running our separate businesses is because he's such a perfectionist. And I'm like, just put it out there. Just do it. Like, come on, done is better than perfect mentality. And, but it's hard to say that, or to do it.
It's funny. I would not have expected that of Chris just cause he's got a tattoo sleeve. Like
I know it's like such an interesting character trait of his because he's like the most easygoing person you can imagine. Like if the kids like drop a glass or a whole gallon of milk, there is no reaction. It's like me, it's like the mom, like, like it's just immediately, that I do that. And he has no reaction. He's just like, okay, let's go get a towel. So like
that's how my husband is.
Yeah. It's nice. Even keel to my roller coaster.
Right. It's like, I guess I can learn something from you. Cause I know I'm feeling you. Like, I'm not on that even keel thing. Like, I'm like,
yes.
Well, funny enough, Jessie, the last question that I have for you was, what last piece of advice do you have for anyone who's interested in kind of doing a little bit more in their business or even considering any form of entrepreneurship? But you kind of answered that for us already. Is there anything that you would like to add to that before I finally release you?
I think that just like the more time you set aside for yourself, the better. And I also think that like we talk about setting aside time to like recharge. Like if it's going to the gym, like for me, when I go to the gym, it's to go to the gym and it's to go in the steam room and it's to take a shower. It's not just like in and out. It's like, I need some me time. And like you need time where your brain is just not distracted in front of a screen. Like for me, all of my best ideas have come to me like in the shower, in the steam room, on a walk, like those times when I'm not distracting myself. So I think like, yes, we have to continue learning, but you also need to just make that time for yourself.
Giving your time, like I call it like when I'm marinating. Like I just like you put all this information in your head, but now like your brain needs a little time to just sit there in the Ziploc bag in the fridge and soak it up a little bit. Like
yeah, exactly.
Anything I can relate to food is gonna go to food. Well, Jessie, thank you so much for coming on and spending your time with us. I know your time is super valuable and super honored to have you on the show. And I wish you all the best of luck. And before I let you go, quickly, everybody listening, we've talked a lot about Jessie's course, but Jessie, can you just give us a final, tell people where to find you, what you're offering right now, and all the fun things?
Yep. Our website is sensory.slp.com. And basically, yeah, we've got some really awesome speaking of accessibility, like we talked about, I always offer free training. So if you are not feeling like it's time to invest right now in an in-depth, very longer program, there is still plenty of ways that we can help you. So we host free trainings almost every single month. Coming up, we've got a sensory intensive, which is 4 days. Then we also have a master class that we do. So if you find me on Instagram or join our Facebook group, which is called Sensory-SLPs, we are always posting about whatever the next free event is going to be.
Yes. And all of that is going to be in the description and in the show notes. So if you guys are not following Jessie already, go follow her, go sign up for her free classes. I didn't know you had free classes. So your girl's about to go sign up, because I have some sweet early intervention babies that need me to know more sensory things. So I will be seeing you. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Jessie, and you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Be sure you are subscribed so you can continue to get more no fluff content from me. And I would really appreciate it if you took a small amount of time to leave a review for the podcast. It really helps to boost it in the search engines and ratings, and it allows me to continue to produce this content for you and get this message out there to other SLPs and healthcare professionals. And as always, happy wealth building, and go do the dang thing.